I think it's safe to say it's been a very eventful week for Nikola Motors, as we've seen a lot of skepticism mixed in with a lot of optimism with the insane amount of publicity this company has received, which has also played into a lot of the equity volatility on Nikola stock. Nikola has indeed met a lot of the milestones that it set out for September, but with the Trevor Milton trial taking place and also some of the overall macroeconomic volatility around the Fed and interest rates affecting the stock, there's been a lot of questions in the media as to whether or not Nikola is just yet another startup company that is probably going to go bankrupt within the next 12 months. So in this video, not only do I want to give you guys my analysis on how Nikola can succeed, but I also want to address a lot of the drama we've been seeing in the media and on YouTube about Nikola's past. And get ready for it because I do have a lot of controversial opinions to share. But as usual guys, before we get into it, make sure to drop me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. So to start things off, let's look at the positives and understand what Nikola did recently in the Hanover IAA transportation event, where they not only unveiled their European Tre BEV and started taking orders for it, but they also revealed the beta prototype for the Nikola Tre FCEV, the European version. Now, the reason why this is a very big deal is because Europe is ahead of the US when it comes to hydrogen adoption, which means that Nikola will have an easier time selling its fuel cell version trucks in Europe, given also a lot of the macroeconomic and fiscal tailwinds we're seeing in that continent. And since Iveco, one of Nikola's main partners, is also based in Europe, in Italy, and has a lot of operations in Germany, it makes sense for Nikola to take this market as a beachhead for its fuel cell program. But that was not all of it. We also got Michael Loskeller, who is the incoming CEO, give a great keynote presentation to investors and potential customers at that event about Nikola's transition from batteries to fuel cell and their ongoing battery program, which obviously is already launched in North America. And like I've said countless times, traditional OEMs are having a very difficult time mass producing and even prototyping electric Class 8 semi-trucks because that is the same path we've seen taking place in the consumer EV business. And as a result, that's leaving a big market open for Nikola Motors, who is obviously a high-risk, early-stage startup, which can pivot and transition much more quickly and effectively than some of those ICE OEMs. And that's actually a big reason why we're not seeing a lot of traditional OEMs like Freightliner or Peterbilt do a lot of this pilot testing that is obviously so popular with Nikola, because those businesses have a much harder time pivoting from their traditional business segment of selling diesel and natural gas trucks. And as a result, their business and management structure is just not focused on commercializing electric powertrains, which obviously are going to be a losing money business in the next 5 years. Now, obviously, Nikola as a fresh startup is taking on that risk, but because they're a completely independent company and are partnering with other businesses to leverage their expertise, they're going to have a much easier time commercializing this electric technology. But it seems like some folks still don't understand that concept, and they're still judging the performance of the stock price as a metric to judge the performance of the business, which, as we all know, are completely separated. I've mentioned this already a couple of times in my past 2 videos, but the main reason why something like Nikola Motors is underperforming in this market is because interest rates are literally being hiked at the fastest rate they have ever had in 41 years. And so an early stage startup like Nikola is going to be the first stock to be affected by that as the macroeconomic situation starts to deteriorate a little bit more. And it's not just Nikola. We've seen this selling across the board across a lot of different stocks like Lucid Motors and Rivian, who are also early stage businesses. Granted, they have a little bit of a better capital position than Nikola. And since Nikola is right now one of the highest shorted stocks in the market, it's no surprise that the performance is very poor because obviously the Russell 2000 index has already collapsed and outperformed the S&P 500 over the past 1 month. And obviously the media is all out there posting articles and headlines about Trevor Milton, who obviously has nothing to do with the business anymore, and how he manipulated the stock price to go from 10 all the way to $90 in 2020, and how that caused a lot of investors to lose money. Now, I don't know about you, but I feel like most investors in the stock market should be responsible for their own decisions and not try to blame external factors for what has happened to their portfolio. But again, that is just how the market works, and it looks like folks just want to get revenge about the money they lost by themselves having pressed the buy or the sell button. Now, obviously, this comment I just made does not mean I agree with what Milton did. I absolutely don't think what he did was right. But it seems to me many folks are using Trevor Milton as a way to dismiss the progress that Nikola is making today without him and with a much better capital and management position. It seems like all of a sudden folks want to do social work and use the stock market as a form of protest for what happened a long time ago by fully grown adults. And it's no surprise that some clowns actually took advantage of all this mayhem and FUD that was released around Nikola Motors and took a profit from that, which is very surprising because last I remembered, using insider information to profit off the equity markets was highly illegal. And it seems like the current CEO, Mark Russell, tends to agree with the idea that I have explained so many times over the past 12 months, which is that Trevor Milton simply had a bug in his head about exaggerating the ability of his company to make the stock go up more. I mean, there were literal text messages presented to the jury between Kim Brady and Mark Russell about how they thought Trevor Milton was doing a lot of exaggeration on his social media posts and some of the media outlets in 2020, which is obviously something that he needs to be held accountable for. And how exactly will what happened in 2020 affect Nikola Motors today? I've said countless times it will have absolutely zero effect on the business because these guys are already selling trucks that are in customers' hands and doing their own R&D and expanding their team, unlike what we saw happen in 2020 when Nikola was a significantly more unproven business. And so let me explain my point once more for the people in the back. If you're a Nikola investor or any growth stock investor and are seeing to get a lot of hate or skepticism from social media about your investment because of something that is completely out of the control of the business, then completely ignore it. Because that kind of skepticism only increases the reward potential of your investment as more people are caught on the wrong side of the trade. And even if you assess the stock price itself, there's been a very consistent pattern that it seems like many folks still don't understand around Nikola. Every single time we tend to get a risk-on rally in the overall market, Nikola stock easily doubles or triples. But then the stock falls, and then it tends to make a newer low before continuing going sideways and then going back up, for again repeating that cycle for the next couple of months. And what we're experiencing today, where Nikola has now made a new 52-week low, is basically the exact same pattern. We saw that happen here in early 2021, and we saw that happen here in May of 2022. And so I have absolutely no idea why folks are surprised with the performance of Nikola stock, because as we all know, and as I've talked so many times in the past, this market right now is only driven by macroeconomics and not anything to do with the fundamental of most growth businesses. As a matter of fact, this situation has been like this since the start of 2021 because that's when inflation actually went high, and as a result, there was a lot of fear around higher interest rates coming in the near future. And so chances are, as long as interest rates continue to go up and inflation is still high, Nikola stock might never break out of this downtrend. And that is a good thing if you're a long-term investor because it means you're getting to buy the stock at a discount to what the market would otherwise price the business in a normal macroeconomic environment. Now, of course, there are risks, and the bankruptcy risk is the biggest one, where Nikola all of a sudden runs out of cash. But with the ability of the business to raise around $200 million in this kind of macroeconomic environment from the first to the second quarter, I'm pretty confident that continuing into 2023, Nikola will have that same ability to raise money just like they've done in this difficult environment, which means that they will most likely survive over the next 12 months. Now, of course, this is not financial advice and the situation can always change, which is why my portfolio is always diversified between my growth stock investments and I don't go all in on just one stock. But with the idea that Nikola has only reported 1 quarter of real revenue from trucks at around $18 million, makes me very excited for what's in store over the next few earnings reports, especially if inflation starts coming down in the end of this year or in the spring of 2023. Because guess what? Having reported only 1 quarter of revenue, the stock is now trading at a price to sales of 85, which is ridiculously cheap compared to where Lucid and Rivian have been trading, even if you account for their better capital position. And I also want to give a shout out to the Romeo stock deadline on September 26th, which has also caused a lot of the volatility in the stock in the short term. because obviously Romeo shareholders now have to convert their shares to Nikola, and some might just be using this opportunity to sell and liquidate their position. But obviously guys, that is just my assessment of the situation, and I can always be wrong. It's all about balancing your winners with your losers, and I'm just telling you what I see happening in this market from my perspective. So feel free to let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below.